Hey, Beastista here, and welcome to week 7 of the VDL. This week it looks a little bit different because we're going to be playing on Showdown instead of on cartridge because my opponent was able to play on cartridge this week. In addition to that, we are currently 5-1, and if we're able to win a single game in this set, we actually lock up first seed for our division, which would mean we get a bye into playoffs, which would be huge. Looking at their team, though, they have some very scary things. Hydreigon, which is generically a very powerful Pokemon. In addition to that, they have an annoying Sand Mode with Hippowdon and Lycanroc, which, both of them makes me outspeed my entire team no matter what, and can do massive damage with Rock Slides and Earthquakes and what have you. And Hippo is also really bulky and hard to deal with. They also have some pretty good speed with Tailwind on Hydreigon, Tailwind on Pavilion, Speed Boost on Espathra, and they also have Redirection with the Pavilion as well. So definitely some annoying things to deal with. So here, this is what we end up deciding to bring. So I decided to go with Life Orb Fluttermane, specifically because I want to get a little bit extra damage. They have no Pokemon that resist both Ghost and Fairy, so I decided to just go with Dazzling Gleam, Shadow Ball, and Moonblast, so double Fairy move and Shadow Ball plus Protect. And I went with the Life Orb to just get a little bit of extra damage. I guess I could have technically gone with Boost Energy instead, but Life Orb just sounded like a little bit more consistent because I might want to switch out, and then I wanted to Protect. And I went with Terra Steel specifically to take some Steel moves and then the Rock moves that I expect to see from Lycanroc. Next up, I'm just going to go down vertically, is Hariyama. I went with thick, fat Hariyama because I'm expecting to see some Heat Waves from Hydreigon, some Torch Songs from Skeledirge, and then possibly even some Ice coverage from Glalie. And I don't really expect to be, statused outside of possible Sleep Powders from Pavilion. And I decided to go with no Fake Out this week because I feel like they're kind of going to prep really well for it because they have a lot of really fast Pokemon or really disruptive Pokemon, and I imagine them are going to have a means to ignore Fake Out. And so I went with Bold Punch and Feint as priority moves, Knock Off and Drain Punch for the rest of the coverage, and it hits pretty much their entire team for good damage. We have Terra Steel to both boost the damage of Steel moves, but also give me the Psychic resist and the Flying resist, so fairly standard from what I've done this week or this season. We have Staraptor with Intimidate, Terra Ground in case they want to do electric coverage, and then we have Tailwind, so I can get a little bit of speed control and match their possible speed. Their Tailwinds that they might set up, Brave Bird, Close Combat just for good damage, and then U-Turn as a means to switch out. I have Charty Berry specifically to resist rock moves from the Lycanroc, and also the Terra Ground helps me with that as well. Definitely think there could be an argument to maybe instead of doing Terra Ground, some other Terra types, but it just seemed like the most consistent. And then next we have Medicham and Slacking, which kind of go together. I am Choice Scarf, Pure Power, Medicham with Skill Swap, so I can give Pure Power to Slacking. I've done this before. And then we have Axle Kick and Psycho Cut as my main damage, and then Thief specifically so I can hit the Skeledirge. Because, I don't want to do Axle Kick into it, especially if I'm Scarfed. And then we have Slacking, which we hope to pair next to Medicham, get it Pure Power. And then with Pure Power, we have Drain Punch to get a little HP and deal some good damage to some like their Steel Pokemon or fighting weak Pokemon. We have Rock Slide, just some spread damage, a way to deal with Pavilion. Throat Chop, which both does good damage to Skeledirge and also prevents it from using Torch Song, which is really big. And then Body Slam is just stab move. And then we're Terra Fairy specifically, so we just resist close combat. I didn't want to go Terra Ghost specifically because I'm expecting possibly some Dark Pulses from Dragon, from the Hydreigon, and Terra Fairy just seems pretty safe overall. And then finally, we went with Misdreavus. In testing, I struggled a lot with Hippowdon, and Misdreavus seems like a good answer to Hippowdon. We have Taunt to prevent it from doing any setup moves or yawn type stuff. Will-O-Wisp to burn both it and some of its other physical attackers. Then we have Shadow Ball, just as generic damage, and then Pain Split to get a little HP. So that's kind of the idea with the Misdreavus. Like I said, I originally didn't want to have it on my team, but in prep I was struggling with Hippo specifically. And with that, let's see what we ended up seeing. This is the team they gave me right before the start of the match. We see that Skeledirge is Terra Poison, Hippowdon is Terra Ground, Espathra is Terra Steel, Glalie Terra Ice, Hydreigon's Terra Ground, and Pavilion is Terra Flying. Their abilities on this are actually not necessarily correct, and almost certainly many of them are not the correct. These are just the Terra types, and they just happen to have these abilities with them when they input them into the Showdown. But this tells me a couple things, which is one, Pavilion's likely going to have a move like Hurricane if it's Terra Flying. Hippowdon has a good chance to be a little bit offensive. Espathra likely is going to have some sort of setup or just going to be generically disruptive and annoying. Skeledirge, I'm not sure why it's Terra Poison, so I'm guessing that maybe the idea was specifically to have Terra Blast for Terra Poison for a specific Pokemon on my team. And then Hydreigon is probably going to have Earth Power with Terra Ground doing it. And then Glalie also probably a little bit more offensive because of its Terra Ice. And so with that, here is game one. So I'm just going to go through the replay. I'm going to probably pause a couple times, tell you some thought processes. But the main idea, game one, was I do not think that Staraptor seems particularly good. I really considered leading Slacking, but I decided I probably shouldn't lead Slacking in case they do some sort of Rage Powder stuff, and Rage Powder next to Medicham could be a little awkward. And so with this, I decided to just go with the Hariyama and the Flutter Mane for that specific purposes. And in addition to that, I think that they seem pretty good into the fair majority of their team. And so they end up leading Pavilion and the Glalie in front of my Hariyama and my Flutter Mane. And this is definitely a concern. The question is I going to Rage Powder or Sleep Powder with Pavilion? I decided to Terra Steel in order to play around a Hurricane from Pavilion. And I decided to also go for a Dazzling Gleam. This allows me to basically guarantee that I can kill the Glalie through a Rage Powder. In addition to that, I didn't want to get hit by a Hurricane by Pavilion. And with this, we can see that they are Choice Scarf Glalie to outspeed my Flutter Mane, and they get an Icy Wind to lower my Flutter Mane speed and get a Sleep Powder on Hariyama. Luckily for me, if they didn't hit my Flutter Mane, I'm able to kill Glalie, and I'm sadly unable to get Pavilion down to 1 HP or kill it. And in addition to that, they bring Hippo out, and my Hariyama is Terra Steel now. So I definitely think my Terra Steel ended up being a big punishment for me. I decided to just go for a Protect here because Pavilion showed to be faster than me in the previous turn, and I'm expecting an Earthquake, especially because Pavilion is on the field. So I switched in Mischievous to be able to take an Earthquake and Protect so I don't get hit by that Earthquake. And they go for a Tailwind, and they're able to go for an Earthquake, which ends up meaning the turn was pretty moot. However, them setting up Tailwind is quite annoying, which means for the next multiple turns, I am going to be slower. And so here, I decide to just stick it out and go for attack. There's a chance I could take an Earthquake. However, they just go for an Iron Head, and I don't take, and they're able to connect the Sleep Powder and make my Mistress go to sleep for the first turn. And however, we see that Pavilion's slowly dying from sand and hopefully will die soon. I decided to bring out Hariyama here for two reasons. One, I want to stall out this as best I can, and I hope that I could take an Earthquake with this Hariyama because Hariyama is fairly bulky and Hippowdon is not the most bulky Pokemon. And I hope that I can get a Will-O-Wisp off into Hippowdon because if it's burned, I should be in very good shape, especially because Pavilion is likely going to die soon. And they go for Protect, which makes sense. I, however, do not wake up for the Hariyama, which is guaranteed to be asleep. They go for an Earthquake. It doesn't affect my Mistress. However, it does get the kill on Hariyama, which is sad. So this is definitely a major downside of me Terra Stealing on turn one. I think that was definitely a major misplay in hindsight of what happened. And I also get, 2 turns of sleep with the Mischief, which is pretty annoying. So here, there's not much I can do unless I outspeed Hippowdon. I'm Choice Scarf, so there's a reasonable chance I outspeed. So, however, if the Pavilion just goes for a Hurricane or an Air Slash into Medicham, I might just immediately die because the Pavilion should be faster than my Medicham with Choice Scarf. But all I can do really is go for the most damage I can with Hippowdon, which is Axle Kick, and then go for either a Shadow Ball into Pavilion or like a Will-O-Wisp into the Hippowdon spot. I decide to go for the Shadow Ball into Pavilion spot, which good for me because I switch into Skeledirge. I get the Axle Kick off, does over 50%, doesn't get the confusion. They go for a Stompy Tantrum, but doesn't kill me. However, I get the third turn of sleep. That third turn of sleep was really bad for me, because if I didn't get 3 turns of sleep, I would have hit the Shadow Ball into the Skeletor spot, which would be amazing shape for me. However, here I should be outspeeding them, even though because of my Choice Scarf with my Meta Jam, and I can go for another Axle Kick into the Hip Out on spot. They switch into Pavilion, letting me kill it. However, definitely letting Meta Jam likely die. This is guaranteed wake up here. I get a Shadow Ball off into the Skeletor. Sadly, I just miss out on a 50% roll. If I would have done a little bit over 50%, this would be really good shape for me, because then I could theoretically kill the Skeletor before it was able to hit me with a Shadow Ball, especially now that it's at +1 special attack. And in addition, they're able to get the sand. So I go for another Shadow Ball. Once again, don't get over 50%, and they're able to go with the Shadow Ball and go for a Sabi Tantrum for some reason instead of Iron Head, and I die from sand though. So definitely a little bit sad game. I think that major misplay on going for the Terra Steel in turn 1. I think that also I might have not had a good enough threat evaluation of Pavilion, because that Tailwind and those sleep patterns were really bad for me. And if I was able to Moonblast it instead of going for the Dazzling Gleam on turn 1, I think I might have been able to do a little bit better. And as we see, though, I think this game ended up being pretty close. If Skeletor was dead, instead of hitting me with that Shadow Ball, I actually think I win this game, because I should be able to easily take on the Hippowdon in a one-on-one, especially with me being able to Will-O-Wisp it and then slowly beat it down with the Shadow Ball. And so I think, also, as we can see, I said a little bit, if I would have gotten the first Shadow Ball off into the Skeletor, I might have been able to win as well, because, it would have been dead at this point, and I wouldn't get hit with that Shadow Ball from it if I didn't get the 3 turns of sleep. So definitely a couple of sad things and a couple of misplays. But with that, we get to game 2. So in game 2, I decided I wanted to lead the Slacking in the Meta Jam. The main reason behind this is because, one, I think it does okay to the possible lead that they just had. Even if I can't get the skill swap off, I should be able to get a Rock Slide off, and my speed can't get lowered because I'm Covert Cloak. And that allows me to probably get a double knockout, and then the following turn I can skill swap if for some reason they go for Rage Powder in the first turn. And in addition to that, we have seen 3 of the moves from Pavilion, which is Tailwind, Sleep Powder, and Protect. There's a good chance that it doesn't have Rage Powder. And if it doesn't have Rage Powder, then that's just a really good lead. And so, as we see, they actually change up their lead a little bit and go with the Spot Throw and Pavilion. And I go with my Slacking and my Meta Jam. And here, like I said, I'm expecting them to hopefully not to Rage Powder. And as we see, they don't. I'm able to get that skill swap off and get huge power. However, they go for a Feather Dance and lower my attack by 2 stages. However, even at -2, because of pure power, the Rock Slide is enough to kill the Pavilion. And here, I'm not in the worst shape. I have to switch out because I am Taunted. I have Truant on my Meta Jam, and so I switch into Hariyama. Sadly, it takes a Psychic move that also crits and lowers its special attacks by 2 stages, which is huge. And I just go for a Throat Chop. Throat Chop is the best damage to Slacking. It also prevents them from going to Torch Song. And so I once again go for a Throat Chop into the Skeletor. And they actually end up going for the Lumina Crash that actually doesn't lower my special attack or special defense because of my Cobra Cloak. I decided to go for a Bullet Punch into the Spot Throat because I was expecting it to die by them probably going for something like a Dazzling Gleam. So definitely surprised that they just let my Hariyama stay in, because if Hariyama just went for a knockoff instead, I probably am in a commanding position. However, with a Throat Chop going to Skeletor, doing over 50% is huge. And on top of that, they went for a sound move, which is kind of what we expected, which is really good. So here I just go for a Bullet Punch into Skeletor again. And kind of expect them to just kill the Hariyama. However, they do not target Hariyama again. They go for attack to Skeletor. However, they decide to go for the Shadow Ball into Hariyama instead of Slacking. I think that means that their likely only coverage is Poison and Torch Song and Shadow Ball, which means that Slacking can actually be targeted if I throw Chop the Skeletor, which is huge. And here now we are at a pretty good position because We have 2 more Pokemon in the back, and they have only these 2 Pokemon, and Skeledirge is threatened pretty extensively right here. So I bring out the Medicham, and I decide to go for a Psychic Cut into Skeledirge because it should kill from this range with a super effective stab move. And I just go for a Body Slam into the Hippo. They do as much damage as Slacking can do. And they just go for an Earthquake, which does okay damage into the Medicham and enough to kill the Slacking with the Sand, which I'm pretty fine with because now I'm able to bring out my final Pokemon, which is Staraptor, who is going to intimidate the Hippo, which is big, and is going to outspeed both these Pokemon. We Psycho Cut into the Skeledirge, kill it, and we are able to go for a Brave Bird into the Hippowdon and bring it down to a range to kill it. I largely considered tearing the Staraptor into Terra Ground here, but I decided against it because I have the Charty Berry if they go for a Rock Slide, and if they do not go for a Rock Slide and they go for something like an Earthquake, Terra Ground could have thrown the game if they got a crit and killed my Staraptor. And so with this, they just do a Stomping Tantrum, but does not kill the Medicham. And I just go for the double up and kill the Hippo and get a nice clean game 2 win. So that went pretty well. The Medicham lead was very effective. Or the Medicham slacking lead was pretty effective. And I definitely was pretty happy with that. Once again, I'm pretty concerned with the Pavilion, and I'm trying to figure out a best way to do it. And I think probably one of the better ways to do it is just to lead slacking. However, I don't want to risk them doing something that prevents my Medicham from being able to skill swap. And I'm still not 100% sure they don't have Rage Powder on the Pavilion, even though it seems like there's a good chance they don't. I think here we are for game 3. So I think I honestly make a little bit of a misplay here. And I decided to not just lead the Medicham slacking again. I think that's probably what I should have led. However, I decided to go with Staraptor and Hariyama because Staraptor can threaten the Pavilion pretty well. And then the Hariyama just is very good offensively and defensively into most of their team. And they end up leading the exact same lead as game 1, which is Pavilion and Glalie. And so this lead is actually very good for me if I just led the exact same lead I did in game 2, because I could just Rock Slide, which threatens both of these offensively. If they go for an Icy Wind, my Slacking's still faster than Pavilion because of the Covert Cloak, and I can still get the Pure Power off because there's no way Glalie can kill either of their Pokemon on my team. However, I just get the Staraptor and the Hariyama, and I decide to just go for Tailwind. And however, they go for an Ice Beam into my Staraptor, getting the kill in a Sleep Power and Hariyama, making my first turn pretty bad. However, luckily for me, they locked into Ice Beam instead of Icy Wind, which means I can bring out the Flutter Mane, go for a Terra Steel, resist the Ice Beam, and get a one-hit KO on Pavilion with Moonblast, preventing it from doing its stuff. And then in addition to that, even the Moody Boost helped that it got a speed drop, but even without it, I would have been fine as long as I didn't get the freeze. And we stall out the first turn of sleep, actually the second turn of sleep of Hariyama. And so now there's a chance that Hariyama will stay asleep. There's already been asleep for 2 turns, so I can technically be asleep for 1 more turn. And so I don't want to be in an awkward situation where I don't wake up here. So I decided to go for the Protect on the Flutter Mane and a Drain Punch into the Glalie spot. Drain Punch should kill the Glalie, and they just go for a Heat Wave, which I'm very happy with because I'm thick fat on the Hariyama, and they go for an Ice Beam in Hariyama, which I'm also very happy with because I'm thick fat on Hariyama. And however, I do get 3 turns of sleep, so now I'm guaranteed to wake up, and I'm feeling pretty good because I can get a clean Drain Punch into Glalie, get a one-hit KO on it, especially because it does -1 defense after its Moody's. And I can get a Moonblast into the Hydreigon, which likely doesn't kill, but is going to do, 60 to 80%, depending on how bulky it is. And we do get the Moonblast off, does about 75%, and they go over a Heat Wave that lists Flutter Mane. I'm not sure exactly if this the set on the Hydreigon, if it's Choice Specs, then that probably kills. But if it's not Choice Specs and it's like something like an Assault Vest, which I don't expect to be. So if it's something like, some other item, I expect that I probably survived that with Flutter Mane. So I don't know if it's that big of a deal because they did just go for the Ice Beam into the Hariyama. However, I wake up here, get a Drain Punch off, which one hit KOs the Glalie, bringing me back up to about 90% HP, and now I'm in amazing shape. And so now they bring out Skeledirge, and I just go for a Protect and a Bullet Punch, because 2 Bullet Punches should kill Hydreigon from this point. I think technically it's probably better to just go for a Drain Punch into this Hydreigon spot. However, luckily for me, they just Torch Song into the Fluttermane. However, it's not that big of a deal because now a Feint kills the Hydreigon, and a Shadow Ball into the Skeledirge, if not killing it, would brought it low enough in which I would have been able to kill it with something like a Bullet Punch or another move the following turn. And so with that, I'm able to win 2-1. And not only am I able to clinch first seed in the playoffs, I'm actually the first team in the entirety of the VDL to lock their first seed up for their division. So it's pretty exciting. This is the first time I've ever been first seed in the VDL as well. So I definitely think I got a little bit lucky in some of these games, but I also, I'm also, very happy with some of the Pokemon I ended up bringing. The Hariyama did massive work game 3, even though it was sleeping a large amount of time, just because that thick bat Assault Vest just took everything so well, and it was able to sit there and do nothing while being asleep incredibly well. In addition to that, the Slacking and Medicham definitely did a lot of work in game 2 as well. But overall, it was a fun game, and my opponent played really well. But with this, I officially make playoffs, and I'm very excited, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and next week I will actually go back to card games.